Hallo Freunde, was geht ab? Willkommen. Kurzer Disclaimer, dieses Video ist auf Englisch. Also wenn du kein Englisch kannst, kannst du gerne ein anderes Video anschauen. Ist auch voll in Ordnung. Let's go.
Oh, let's fucking go.
Everything about Dubai screams excess, from the heights of the tallest skyscraper in the world to the depths of the deepest underwater pool. But most of the glittering and effective lures that the UAE's tourism board has are their influencers. Tens of thousands of bikini models and Andrew Tate wannabes descend on the city every year to show off the sights and lounge around in air-conditioned villas. But underneath Dubai's surface...
Ich habe überlegt, ich möchte dieses Video schauen und man hatte schon sehr, sehr viel Positives und extrem viel Negatives über Dubai gehört. Schreibt mir gerne in die Kommentare, ob ihr schon mal in Dubai wart, was ihr so von der City haltet, und wir legen los, beziehungsweise machen weiter mit dem Video.
of glitz and glamour lies an underbelly of sex, exploitation and depravity. In fact, some of the content in this video is highly disturbing, so turn back now if you don't want to know the true reality of being an influencer in Dubai. Now, Dubai is known around the world for its cleanliness, both their public places as well as their people. If you take a walk around the sun-baked streets, you'll see it's clear of litter and no crime to be seen, enforced by the highly strict religious laws and the lengthy prison sentences for criminals. Every other week, there's headlines about some Westerner getting arrested for having drugs in their system, or even having CBD in their car, showing affection in public, or criticizing the government. It's not an atmosphere you'd expect to match up with influencers in bikinis, but the UAE makes an exception for them. It's a small glimpse of the hypocrisy that underlines this whole city. While the 90% of the UAE's population are migrant workers, and the other native citizens lower down the ladder who have to obey these laws or else, as always, there's a whole other world for the wealthy and powerful. These are the people who, in their own narrow view of the world, have already got anything and everything they want. Whatever they desire can be met with the click of a finger. Whatever food they want, whatever mansion they want to live in, and whatever they want to do. All of their wishes can be arranged for just a tiny fraction of their almost unlimited oil wealth. The people and world around them have been quantified and given a price. So where can they go from here? What other experiences are there left to explore? Well, it's no wonder they've been indulging in their darkest and most deranged fantasies yet. You can get an idea of where we're going from these messages sent to influencers who appeared in Love Island, a reality TV show in the UK. Ein Like, a model from the show, woke up one day to see a weird DM from a man from Dubai. He offered her £20,000 for dinners and drinks. You can understand what the implications were there. She was only 19 at the time of the message. A couple years later, after she'd been on Love Island, an agency which said they represented a client in Dubai offered her £50,000 for 5 nights in the city. Included in the offer was a non-disclosure agreement, a common practice in this new wave of propositioning in sex tourism. Ein Like then stated that she refused both of the offers. Another Love Island star, Rosie Williams, was offered £100,000 per year spent being the companion of a man from Dubai. Along with the cash came the promise that he would take her shopping whenever she wanted and foot the bill for her handbags and clothing. It happens all the time.
Also ich glaube, die Dudes in Dubai haben Bock auf Love Island Teilnehmerinnen.
The same article describing these cases talks about the countless anonymous tips and stories of similar things happening to other social media models. It just doesn't get talked about.
Was stand da? She had been offered £10,000 for sex as part of a holiday package. Ey, mega nices Package. Aber da muss man sagen, es gibt einige Frauen, die das Ganze auch schon für weniger als £10.000 machen. Aber gut, das ist dann auch wieder ein anderes Seil.
Countless anonymous tips and stories of similar things happening to other social media models. It just doesn't get talked about. Either the women refuse and don't mention it, or they accept and they're too embarrassed or under agreement of silence. You see, most of the influencers that come to Dubai go for the same reason they do anything else: brand deals. Brand deals are the currency which fuels the whole industry. Influencers are only as valuable as the amount of people they can convince to buy your product. So when companies with massively overinflated marketing budgets are looking to appeal to a younger audience, they're an easy solution. It's this path that the makeup brand Tarte went for, shipping 50 influencers and their plus ones to an all-expense paid trip to Dubai. Footage from the event showed that each influencer was given their own luxury apartment and business class flights to and from the home country. The flights alone cost tens of thousands of dollars each. Add in shopping sprees and luxury restaurants, and you can get a picture that there was more to this than simple marketing. It didn't help that in their promotions, lots of the influencers didn't even know the name of the brand they were shilling. Apart from being completely out of touch with real life, there was definitely something else going on.
Das ist auch so geil, ne? Die Influencer wissen nicht mal, wofür die jetzt werben sollen, aber fliegen einfach trotzdem hin. Das ist halt auch einfach Heldentum, ganz ehrlich.
Tarte's CEO stated that they don't do traditional marketing, and instead they spend their budget on building relationships and building up communities. In this case, they were probably building up a relationship with the UAE's Tourism Council and their limitless funds. For the biggest influencers, they don't have to worry about anything. Their agents and their brands will sort it all out for them. But for the rest of the Instagram models who aren't at the top, it's a completely different story. For them, it will often begin with a direct message from a rich businessman who will offer them massive sums of cash for vague favors and a trip to Dubai. Other times it's been a friend of theirs in the industry. They'll tell them about the rich opportunities, the ways that their own trip to Dubai boosts their career, and how nothing explicitly sexual will be expected of them once they get there. Whatever they can say to convince them to go for modeling work or some other cover. For the greedy and the desperate that take the offer, they're transported to a different world, and here is where it gets very graphic. You see, this sort of thing isn't just happening in Dubai, it's happening all over America, where people find themselves the victims of abuse by powerful, predatory people at the head of organizations all across the states. And if you've ever experienced hardship at the hands of those running these powerful companies and organizations, pursuing legal action might be your best option to achieve justice. But the problem for most people, like many of those examples I discussed in this video, is that you never feel like you can achieve justice because taking legal action can be so financially draining. But this is where the legal firm Morgan steps in to alleviate that burden. Morgan is a law firm that actually just won a giant case for a client suffering from nursing home abuse and neglect, winning $12.3 million from the verdict.
Hier geht's weiter.
Morgan. And it's good to note that none of these stories can be confirmed with very hard evidence, besides a few disgusting videos, but the ludicrous amounts of different sources, the explicit details and the embarrassing and secretive nature of the industry makes it incredibly likely they're true. The most circulated story was told by one Twitter user in a threaded tweet, recounting a conversation they had with one of these models who had been duped and coerced into it. The woman involved described meeting a rich and handsome Emirati businessman on a private flight, who convinced her to come to Dubai with him. Once they were there, they spent time on dates, saw the sights, and did other touristy stuff. But a few days into the trip, he tells her to dress up fancy and drives her to a villa on the outskirts of town, miles from any other houses. Inside are a collection of older, wealthy men, with more women her age. Everything
das wird langsam echt eklig, ne?
seemed kind of normal, if a little sketchy on the first day there. But at 2 AM that night, she was awoken by an intense.
Aber wo ich sagen muss, das ist ja noch normal, dass du als reiche Person dir eine attraktive junge Dame suchst, um die dann sozusagen zu präsentieren als deine Begleitung und der dann beispielsweise Geld dafür gibst oder so. Aber ich denke auch, das hat sich die Dame nicht ganz so vorgestellt unter einem Date.
Coming to get her for games. When she came downstairs, she was greeted by a large room full of sex toys and buckets. The other women were there. Some of them looked nervous, whilst the men were calmly waiting. The women were made to strip. Then one of the men pulled down their pants and defecated into the bucket. For the next 2 days, they all engaged in sexual acts, often involving the use or consumption of what is in the buckets. Obviously, lots of these women wanted to leave immediately, but they had been promised.
Bro, der hat reingekackt.
What is in the buckets?
Der hat reingekackt in den Eimer und die Ladies mussten das dann essen und so. Boah. Ey, das ist wirklich, das ist hart, man.
See, lots of these women wanted to leave immediately, but they had been promised $50,000 if they lasted the 2 days. On top of that, if they left, they would be without their personal belongings in the middle of nowhere in a very foreign country. So nearly all of them chose to stay. It's stories like these that give a glimpse into the true reality of being an influencer or a model in Dubai. It's in stark contrast to the clean, idyllic pictures you see on their feeds. Instagram and social media in general is a showcase of the results, not what they had to do to get there. The cars and the clothes and the holidays might look incredible, but you'll never know the lengths some people have gone to get there. Would a Chanel bag really be worth going through that? But in some cases, you can't blame the people for doing this. If they've been duped or threatened into it, or if their situation is desperate enough to where they have no choice, it's an awful decision for them to make, but for others, it's motivated by greed alone. However, the real blame here lies with the rich men instigating it, creating the networks and taking advantage of people. It's relatively unsurprising though when you consider how Dubai treats the migrant population in other cases. Either they're working them like slaves, withholding their meager wages for months or years at a time, or giving them under the bare minimum of living conditions. It's predictable that they'd be using these people for other things. That's the side of the scandal we don't see, and it's likely to be far worse than what does come out. Influencers and Instagram models, if they're going to talk about it, at least have a platform to get the word out. Migrant workers from developing countries don't really have that same following or opportunity to make their situation known, and Dubai's elites are nearly certain to have taken full advantage of that. If what we do hear about is so horrific, you can only dread to imagine what happens that we don't know. There are some people that might say it doesn't matter what happens between consenting adults behind closed doors. Of course, that totally forgets how hypocritical it is for Dubai Dubai's elites and how disgusting it is. And unfortunately, it isn't always just adults involved, as the next story shows. One video of a woman speaking out about a contract she had signed was incredibly revealing. In the video, she verbally consents to flying out to Dubai, getting an STD check, then to performing sexual acts with a client, a rich member of Dubai's ruling class called Sultan Ali. She mentions specific foot stuff, but the worst part was that she also mentions doing the same things with the client's underage brother, only 13 years old according to the model. In return, she'd get $25,000 before she left and a further $25,000 after the deed was done.
What the fuck?
I'm going to come to Dubai to Sultan Ali. In Dubai I will have a STD check and Mr. Ali too. After that, we are having unprotected sex. And I will let Mr. Ali lick the humus of my feet. I will also fuck his virgin brother, who is 13 years old.
Only a few of these kinds of videos.
Aber warum ist das im Internet? Also, was erwartet sie jetzt dabei? Ist das nicht ein bisschen sehr komisch?
Have ever been leaked, but it's likely to become common practice. There could be tens of thousands more out there, and it's doubtful that these men would even need the video or the contract for legal reasons. Dubai's legal system is so biased against migrants and foreigners compared to the...
Man muss halt echt sagen, mit bisschen Geld kannst du schon viel anstellen in der Welt, ne? Also, ja, und wenn du dann so viel Geld hast, wie die Leute da drüben, ich will gar nicht wissen, was da wirklich abgeht in Dubai und so, bei manchen Sachen von Leuten, die wirklich Geld haben. Ich glaube, da gibt's schon verrückte Geschichten.
ruling classes, then nothing would ever happen, even if they did get caught somehow. Corruption runs deep, and being connected and a part of the powerful means you're not going to be punished by them. Instead, it's probably meant as a power play and a verification. It matches up with the former flight attendant mentioned in a story on the scandal. In her post on TikTok, she went into all the gory details about her conversations with Instagram models and influencers on their way to Dubai. One woman she spoke to in first class had taken her notice because she was eating tons of oatmeal and yogurt, while she kept talking about getting more fiber in her diet. When the flight attendant took the bait and asked why, she was happy to tell her. And now this far in, you can guess what she told the flight attendant. All the fiber was for indecent acts that she was going to perform on a rich client from Dubai. After it was done, she would be paid £20,000.
All this fiber on board, you know, you're getting a good little meal in, and then you're like pooping in somebody's mouth who's paying you $20,000 to do it. Like,
die hat irgendwen ins Maul reingekackt und der Typ bezahlt ihr $20.000. Will ich verarschen? Wie kann man darauf stehen? Jungs, das ist schon wieder zu viel. Ich pack gleich meine Schutzbrille wieder aus, Mann.
But what's so surprising about the video though is how casual the flight attendant is telling her the story. She insinuates that it happens all the time and that she's had similar, if less extreme, experiences. The practice clearly runs deep and it's likely that it's been going on for a few years now, considering the amount of stories and how accepted it is. The line between sex workers and social media models is blurred significantly to the point that Instagram is like a public catalogue for rich Emiratis to browse. One British Instagram model with 85,000 followers, who also had a reputation as a working girl, was a rare example of Dubai's authorities cracking down on the trade. She fled Dubai in 2021 after Dubai's police officers raided her apartment. They had found her profiles on Seeking Arrangement, an infamous website designed to connect young women and rich older men. At the apartment, they found over $54,000 worth of local currency in cash, probably earnings from her work there. The influencer and her boyfriend eventually ended up back in London. Although the UK and Dubai have a mutual extradition treaty, meaning they could be arrested at any time, but Dubai still hasn't made the call. However, stories like these are just so far and few between. Dubai's police probably decided to stop turning a blind eye, not because of some change in overall policy, but because the parties in the sector continued well into the COVID pandemic. Even as the world was either shuttered in their homes or working to keep society running, the grind never ended for influencers. There's tons of examples of influencers going to Dubai over lockdown, claiming it was essential for their mental health or any other ridiculous excuse. It's a move that parallels other examples of influencers' self-centeredness and their complete lack of regard for morality. Those Instagram models that willingly promote Dubai and go there to enrich themselves are all working to propagate a fantasy. It should be obvious by now that Dubai isn't the paradise you see on social media. It's a cold, materialistic, vapid, plastic, and fake city that treats people as yet another resource to use and discard to serve their ruling elites. So when you next see somebody basking in the sun on the balcony of the Dubai villa, don't forget what they might have done behind closed doors to get there.
Ja, wenn du nächstes Mal eine Instagram-Influencerin siehst, die sich in Dubai ein bisschen präsentiert, dann Freunde, vergesst nicht, die hat wahrscheinlich böse Shit ins Maul bekommen. Die wurde wahrscheinlich böse angekackt, Freunde. Aber gut. Ich muss persönlich sagen, das ist generell ein Thema, da habe ich auch in persönlichen Kreisen schon das ein oder andere Mal drüber gesprochen. Und es hat mich immer sehr interessiert. Es ist halt spannend, dass es keine wirklichen Beweise gibt. bis auf 2, 3 Aussagen von Leuten, die natürlich auch darauf aus sein könnten, einen gewissen Ruhm mitzunehmen und so. Aber ja, die Gerüchte darüber häufen sich, das kann man definitiv sagen. Aber was ich sagen würde, Freunde, ihr müsst es einfach mal live erleben. Fliegt einfach mal hin, lasst euch einfach mal ankacken und dann sehen wir weiter. Ihr schickt mir dann einfach eine Nachricht auf Instagram. Und wir hören uns dann im nächsten Video, Freunde. Macht's gut, schöne Woche euch, passt auf euch auf. Au revoir, Freunde. Ciao.
Jealous of my ways, bitch. I don't give a fuck, bitch.